everyone, it's Clarice and today I'm going to talk about Own Voices October. But before I get to the video, I thought I would mention something that I just would feel weird not mentioning because by the time this video goes up, I should be 21 years old. Which is so weird because I still feel like I'm like 14, I still probably look 14, but apparently I am 21. Yes, my birthday was last September 28th, so expect a book haul soon, but for now, suffice it to say that I am 21 years old. But anyway, enough about how old I'm getting. On to the video. As some of you may know, Own Voices October is happening this October, and what Own Voices October is a readathon hosted by Katie and Mel, whose announcement videos I will link down below. And it's a readathon that focuses on Own Voices books, which are books that feature a character of or a situation involving a minority that the author also belongs to. And it's a movement that kind of falls under the We Need Diverse Books movement, but it's a more specific one, which not only encourages writers to write diverse characters, but also encourages readers to support writers that are telling their own story. This video isn't about explaining what Own Voices is. I will leave links to other videos or articles that may be able to explain it in more detail or discuss it in more detail with you down below. But for now, I'm just going to talk about the books that I'm planning to read for Own Voices October, as well as a few recommendations that I can give if you're planning on participating as well, or even if you're just looking for Own Voices books to read in general. I'm not planning to read only Own Voices books this October, so I probably won't get to all the books that I'm mentioning, though who knows. But these are the books that I'm considering reading for Own Voices October. So the first of the books I'm considering reading this October is A Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James. Excuse the reflectiveness of this book because currently it's still in plastic. But anyway, it's a book set in Jamaica by a Jamaican author. I don't know too much about the plot because I prefer going into books without knowing too much about the plot, though I know it does have something to do with, I think, the assassination or attempted assassination of Bob Marley. So hopefully I enjoy it. I am slightly intimidated because of the size, but I'm also really excited to get to it, so hopefully I do end up getting to it this month. Another book I'm considering reading is Wounded Little Gods by Eliza Victoria, which is a book that I also don't know too much about plot-wise, but based on what I have read, it does seem like it's going to be a bit fantastical, possibly a little creepy. It's set in the Philippines, in Makati, I think, and it's written by a Filipino author. I have read Dwellers by Eliza Victoria recently and I really enjoyed it, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading Wounded Little Gods by the same author. As I said, it's set in the Philippines, written by a Filipino author. I think it also may involve some Filipino mythology. Not sure, but I really do hope I enjoy this book. The next book is a book I borrowed from my boyfriend's brother, though actually I didn't borrow it so much as he told my boyfriend to make me read it, and that book is Hopscotch by Julio Cortazar. Hopefully I pronounced that properly, but it's a book by an Argentinian writer, and it's about an Argentinian writer, so I suppose it fits Own Voices pretty well. And it's a book that I was interested in reading even before my boyfriend's brother, RB, told me to read it. It was like in my list of books to borrow from the library one of these days. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think it's a book that doesn't go like totally normally chronologically. I think after each chapter it tells you which page to jump to, and that's why part of the reason, I guess, why it's called Hopscotch. And that just sounds really interesting and I hope I'm going to enjoy this book. Next book is a book that I hope to borrow from the library this month, and that is The Parable of the Sower by OCTAVIA BUTLER. I don't know what this is about at all. As in, I haven't even read the synopsis, I haven't heard anyone mention this book specifically in any of their videos, but it was a book that I saw on the Own Voices Goodreads list that Katie and Mel made for this readathon, which I'll also link down below. A lot of things will link down below. But anyway, it's a book that I saw there, and it's by an author that I've been meaning to read from for such a long time because she's just a very highly regarded sci-fi author, and I love sci-fi. And I figured Own Voices October is probably a perfect time for me to do that. The next two books I'm going to mention are books that I will have to buy on the Kindle before I read them because I don't currently own them and they're not in the library. But the first of those books is George by Alex Gino, which I've heard so many good things about on BookTube from so many people, so I'm really excited to read it. I think it's a middle grade novel about a trans kid. I'm just really glad it's a book that exists, and hopefully I can experience it for myself by reading it. And the last book I'm considering reading is another, I think, middle grade book, but this one is a graphic novel, and it's called El Defo by C.C. Bell. I actually think that this is autobiographical, so I guess it's a graphic memoir rather than a graphic novel. But it's about her growing up as a kid having to have a hearing aid. I don't think I've read many books about people with disabilities or illnesses, but I haven't read any books for sure about someone with hearing disabilities. And so I'm really excited to read this one too. And so that is my TBR, though it's more like a tentative TBR because I'm probably not going to read all of them. But those are the books that I'm considering reading. But if you are looking for more Own Voices books to read, there are a few that I've read that I can recommend to you if you're trying to look for other books to read. Of course, I have to recommend something from my own country. And for that, I'm going to be recommending Smaller and Smaller Circles by F.H. Batacan. Just to be really brief about it, Smaller and Smaller Circles is a book about a couple of Jesuit priests that attempt to solve a string of murders. I feel like it gives a good picture of what Manila looks like now, even though it's set a bit before now. A lot of the problems are still the same. You get a view of the people living in poverty in the Philippines, as well as the more trivial problems that we have often, like with the weather and the traffic. And so while this isn't my favorite book, it's definitely one that I think gave a good view of Manila to someone who doesn't really know what it's like to live here. Next is a book that I read super recently, as in Diversathon recently, and that book is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. And it follows the life and struggles of an Indian boy who decides to go to school outside of the reservation, basically being the only Indian guy in a school full of white people. And I like this book because it was really funny and lighthearted at times, but also really emotional and real. And the last fiction book I'm going to recommend is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, and it follows the struggles of two Afghan women in, I think, a time of war in Afghanistan. And I said I think a time of war because I'm not totally sure. But the thing about Khaled Hosseini's novels is even when the plot doesn't stay with you, the emotions do. I still hold this book and I remember all the things I felt while I was reading it. And his books are definitely emotional roller coasters. So if you like really emotional historical fiction type books, I definitely suggest that you read this or The Kite Runner, but I prefer this. Now, the next books I'm going to recommend are all non-fiction. I'm not totally sure about the specifics of Own Voices if non-fiction books are included, but even if it's not included in Own Voices, I hope that you read these books, and I feel like they still fulfill the same goals that the Own Voices hashtag does, which is to encourage readers to hear from people telling their own stories. First of those non-fiction things I'm going to recommend is Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which I'm sure almost all of you probably know about. I read this recently and it makes me so sad reading these things and knowing that these things are actually happening to real people in Holocaust. It definitely gives you a more personal perspective on the things that happened during that terrible, terrible time. I read Mouse right before the Diversathon, but the next book is a book that I read during Diversathon, and that is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, which is another graphic memoir, and I expected it to be about Alison Bechdel's coming out story, but it turned out to be more than just that. It's about her coming out story, but also about her father's not coming out story, and her father's struggles, I guess, with keeping that part of his identity from a society that didn't really condone it, and what the repercussions of keeping that big a part of his identity were to himself and also to the people around him. Next is Neil Patrick Harris's autobiography called Choose Your Own Autobiography. It's nice hearing about him growing up and trying to find himself and what his struggles were, and especially growing up in the industry that he's in, but also about his relationship with his husband and about his children, which I probably enjoyed the most because his children were twins, you know, a boy and a girl, and I have a twin brother, and so it just made me feel nostalgic even though it wasn't us, it was them. And I just really enjoyed this book. And the last one I'm going to mention is Hyperbole and HALF by Ali Brush. Her comics are really funny, but also a lot of them just get so real. You can never expect to totally be able to understand what someone with depression is going through, but being able to read something like this kind of helps, you know. And it's always good to understand these things a little bit more. So those are all of my recommendations and all of the books that I plan to read in Own Voices October. Are you participating in Own Voices October? What do you plan to read? Or have you read any of the books that I'm considering reading and think that I should prioritize any of them specifically? Or do you know if autobiographical books count as Own Voices books? Because I'm really not sure. Anyway, leave answers to any of those questions if you'd like in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!